So, friends, after spending months trying to keep the Epstein files buried, secreted, hidden from public view, now, all of a sudden, Donald Trump wants them released? I mean, could Donald Trump really be experiencing a spasm of transparency? Come on, man. Let's talk about what's really going on here. Because justice matters. Hey all, Glenn Kirshner here. So friends, nobody's falling for Donald Trump's latest scam, his latest con, his latest distraction. I mean, at this point, even the gullible must be saying to themselves, hey, wait a minute. I think this guy's trying to pull a fast one on us. So friends, we're going to start briefly with the new reporting, and then we're going to take a stroll through Realityville and talk about what's really going on here. But first, this from the BBC. Headline: Trump calls on House Republicans to vote to release Epstein files. And that article begins, U.S. President Donald Trump has urged lawmakers in his own party to vote to release files relating to the late convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. Trump wrote on Sunday night that Republicans in the House of Representatives should do so because we have nothing to hide. It is a striking reversal for Trump after weeks of saying the clamor for a vote on the release was a Democratic-driven distraction. There has been a slow drip feed of documents concerning the disgraced financier by House Democrats, some of which reference Trump, who has always denied any link to Epstein's sex abuse and trafficking. But details of his and other prominent figures' past relationship with Epstein have fueled speculation and led to a public spat with one of Trump's staunchest supporters. Potentially dozens of Republicans have now signaled they are willing to break ranks and vote in favor of a bill that would compel the U.S. government to publish all its documents on Epstein. Supporters of the bill appear to have enough votes for it to pass the House this week, though it is unclear whether it would pass in the Senate, the other chamber of the U.S. Congress. Okay, friends, we're going to do this one by the numbers. We're going to start back on July 7th, when the FBI and the DOJ jointly issued a memo announcing that they had done an exhaustive search of all of the Epstein files, and there is absolutely no evidence warranting further investigation. We're going to start with that memo, and we're going to move right through what Donald Trump has now said yesterday and even today. And yes, I will liberally be adding my editorial additions throughout. So let's start with that FBI and DOJ memo. As part of our commitment to transparency, the Department of Justice and the Federal Bureau of Investigation have conducted an exhaustive review of investigative holdings relating to Jeffrey Epstein. To ensure that the review was thorough, the FBI conducted digital searches of its databases, hard drives, and network drives, as well as physical searches of squad areas, locked cabinets, desks, closets, and other areas where responsive material may have been stored. These searches uncovered a significant amount of material, including more than 300 gigabytes of data and physical evidence. This systematic review revealed no incriminating client list. Here's the first editorial addition. Remember when Pam Bondi was on Fox Entertainment and she was asked about the Epstein client list directly, and she said, "It is on my desk and I'm reviewing it," inferentially signaling that it would be released soon, until shortly thereafter she said, Client list? What client list? There's no client list. Ignore what I said previously. This memo continues. This systematic review revealed no incriminating client list. There was also no credible evidence found that Epstein blackmailed prominent individuals as part of his actions. We did not uncover evidence that would predicate an investigation against uncharged third parties. And friends, that's the money line. The FBI and the Department of Justice, Kash Patel and Pam Bondi, announced to the American people in writing on FBI and DOJ letterhead, no, there is no evidence to pursue. There is no adequate predication. Those are magic words, meaning the FBI is prohibited by procedure, by protocol, by ethics, and even by law, prohibited from further investigating because there's no evidence that would support further investigation. Do I believe Kash Patel? Not as far as I can throw him, but that is what the FBI and the DOJ put in writing. So there can be no further investigation. And because there can be no further investigation, Donald Trump was saying things like the following as recently as September. Headline: Trump urges Congress to halt push for Epstein document release, calls it a Democrat hoax. And then, friends, in recent days, we get the flip-flop, the U-turn, the 180, with Donald Trump posting the following. Now that the Democrats are using the Epstein hoax involving Democrats, not Republicans, to try to deflect from their disastrous shutdown and all their other failures. Quick addition here, it was a Republican shutdown, Republicans in control of the House and the Senate and the White House. It was a Republican shutdown. Now that the Democrats are using the Epstein hoax, I will be asking AG Pam Bondi and the Department of Justice, together with our great patriots at the FBI, to investigate Jeffrey Epstein's involvement and relationship with Bill Clinton, Larry Summers, Reid Hoffman, J.P. Morgan Chase, and many other people and institutions to determine what was going on with them and him. This is another Russia scam with all the arrows pointing to the Democrats. Records show that these men and many others spent large portions of their life with Epstein and on his island. Stay tuned. But whoa. Wait a minute, Donald. Your FBI, your DOJ issued that definitive public statement in that memo. Wasn't too long ago. Remember that, Donald? When they said there is no evidence that would allow for a further investigation. There is no adequate predication that anybody else committed crimes. And now you're demanding that the investigation be jump-started and that it only look into Democrats. Is that the gist of your post? Well, the good news, Donald, is that because Kash Patel and Pam Bondi have already concluded there can be no further investigation, as they put in their memo, well then, surely they will push back. They will hold the line. They will stand strong based on their prior announcement that there can't possibly be another investigation, right? Here is how Pam Bondi responded, of course, on social media, to Donald Trump's flip-flop, his U-turn, his 180, now demanding that there be investigations of Democrats vis-a-vis the Epstein files. Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you? He didn't compliment you. He demanded that you now act inconsistent with your prior announcement that there couldn't possibly be any further investigation because there was not adequate predication. So it would be unlawful, a violation of the constitutional rights of the Democrats that Trump is now insisting you investigate? He didn't compliment you, and yet, Pam, you start your reply with, "Thank you, Mr. President." SDNY, the Southern District of New York, U.S. Attorney Jay Clayton is one of the most capable and trusted prosecutors in the country. Quick addition here, if Pam Bondi was under oath, she could probably be charged with perjury for saying Jay Clayton, who was never a prosecutor in his life, is one of the most capable and trusted prosecutors in the country. And I've asked him to take the lead on an investigation that I should not be conducting because of my prior declaration in that memo. As with all matters, the department will pursue this with urgency and integrity to deliver answers to the American people. So friends, just to recap before we move on, for months and months, Donald Trump is whining and bellyaching and complaining. Don't anybody talk about the Epstein files anymore. It's all a hoax. There's nothing there. And then, perhaps picking up on dear leader's sentiment, the FBI and the DOJ says, that's right, nothing there. Nothing can possibly be investigated. We've done an exhaustive search, no further evidence. Then all of a sudden, when Donald Trump does his flip-flop, his U-turn, his 180, and says, now I want the Epstein files investigated, but only with respect to Democrats, Pam Bondi says, thank you, Mr. President. We're going to get right on it. And then here's an interesting little twist. Remember Donald Trump's rant about how he wants Democrats only investigated, including somebody named Reid Hoffman? Well, Reid Hoffman instantly issued a statement of his own. Reid Hoffman responds to Trump's Epstein investigation order, an obvious ploy. Reid Hoffman on Friday responded to President Trump's order to launch an investigation against him and other Democrats in relation to their connection with convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. Quote, the call for an investigation is an obvious ploy to avoid releasing the files. Simply release all the files and expose the people who had both deep and ongoing relationships with Epstein, Hoffman, the co-founder of LinkedIn, wrote in a post on X. In a follow-up post, Hoffman, pledged to advocate for the release of all Epstein files to gain justice for the victims of Epstein's sex trafficking ring and promote the values of truth our great country was founded on. Quote, I want the complete release because it will show that the calls for baseless investigations of me are nothing more than political persecution and slander, Hoffman wrote late on Friday. Quote, I was never a client of Epstein's and never had any engagement with him other than fundraising for MIT, he continued. Now, friends, before we move on to Donald Trump's most recent post regarding the Epstein files, let me tell you where my mind went, the mind of an old career prosecutor, went when I first heard Donald Trump, after saying for months there should be no investigation, when I first heard Donald Trump call for an investigation and Pam Bondi saying, thank you, sir, we'll get right on it, I thought, okay, this is nothing more than Donald Trump trying to give DOJ the opportunity to argue, oh, we can't possibly release anything publicly now because it's a pending investigation. And, a pending investigation can actually legitimately be used as a shield against public disclosure. As a career prosecutor, I didn't want information or evidence in my pending investigations being disclosed publicly. It could interfere with the investigation. It could tip off a potential suspect. It could endanger a possible witness, right? A target of the investigation could tamper with evidence or flee to avoid prosecution. Now, none of this is legitimate, but I saw it as a transparent attempt for Donald Trump and Pam Bondi to be able to say, well, I know Congress wants the Epstein files released. There may be FOIA lawsuits, Freedom of Information Act lawsuits filed seeking the release of the Epstein materials, but pending investigation. Sorry, everybody. And then he could have his U.S. attorney up in New York just run out the investigation for another 3 years until he left office. So I'm going to admit I was somewhat surprised at the latest post by Donald Trump, but I feel like Trump was backed into a corner for two reasons that I'll explain after we look at Trump's most recent post. As I said on Friday night aboard Air Force One to the fake news media, House Republicans should vote to release the Epstein files because we have nothing to hide. And it's time to move on from this Democrat hoax perpetrated by radical left lunatics in order to deflect from the great success of the Republican Party. Friends, Donald Trump was backed into a corner. Two corners, actually. First of all, he accused Reid Hoffman of, being dirty, being complicit, being incriminated in the Epstein files, called him out by name. What did Reid Hoffman do? He went on the offensive. He said, release the damn files because I did nothing wrong. Release them, release them, release them. Man, talk about calling Donald Trump's bluff. If somebody that Trump accused of being, dirty in the Epstein files is demanding the release of those files, and Donald Trump persists in saying, no, don't release them, pending investigation. Man, who's going to lose that argument 10 times out of 10? Who's got something to hide? Who's trying to cover it up? Not Reid Hoffman, Donald Trump. What does that tell you about who's really implicated in the Epstein files? That's one corner. But the other corner is perhaps even more consequential, because once Donald Trump learned that the Republican Party had broken from him, and as many as 100 or more Republicans in the House, that's the reporting, are prepared to vote against Donald Trump's position. They're prepared to vote in favor of releasing the Epstein files. Donald Trump's party, is going to buck him to the tune of 100 or more representatives. That kind of thing can be the political death blow to the aspiring dictator. I mean, first, he can't even keep Jimmy Kimmel off air for more than a week when Dear Leader wanted him off the air permanently. Boy, that's one weak-ass dictator right there. And now his whole party is going to buck him on something as fundamental as the release of the Epstein files. Donald Trump will have absolutely no power, no authority, no credibility left. All that's left to do is maybe just attack some foreign country as a distraction, the tail wagging the dog, divert attention from the horror show for Donald Trump politically that the Epstein files have become. So, of course, rather than going down in flames and being exposed as losing all of your dictatorial power by your own party, Donald Trump had to give in and say, oh, okay, then I want Congress to vote to release the Epstein files. Well, no, you don't. But what you want even more is to try to retain your dictatorial power at all costs. But you know what, Donald? Your dictatorial grip is loosening, slipping through your fingers. And it won't be long until you are rendered powerless. And then your own party, your own members of Congress who are desperate to win re-election are going to realize that they have a better shot at winning re-election if they break from you than if they continue to stick with you. And let's face it, friends, at the bottom of it all, Donald Trump has the power to release the Epstein files in total right now. All he has to do is say, hey, Pam, release all the files. Not, I'm urging Congress to vote in favor of release, and then it'll go to the Senate, then it'll come to my desk. And then, What a ridiculous game he's playing. Again, he's only fooling the gullible, and even the gullible, I think, are catching on. He could have released the files anytime he wanted to, rather than playing this stupid game and changing positions every other day. Donald Trump is circling the drain. Donald Trump is losing power. This is not sustainable, and Donald Trump's presidency is likely to implode politically. Because justice matters. It still matters. Friends, as always, please stay safe. Please stay tuned. And I look forward to talking with you all again tomorrow.